Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. My name is Ceara Nobles and I am the author of the upcoming novel Safekeeping. Since I am right in the middle of final edits for Safekeeping, I thought I would go ahead and share a little bit about my editing process today and some of the tools that I found that have been really helpful. Before I go into the actual editing part, I want to go through a little bit of my actual writing process so that you can understand how I get from point A to point B and how I approach my editing process. The first thing you need to know is that I'm a plotter. If you don't know what a plotter is, there are two different kinds of people in writing that are commonly talked about. There's the plotter and the pantser. So the pantser are the people who like to write a story I think it comes from flying by the seat of your pants, which means that rather than creating a whole outline before they start a story, they just kind of like to start writing and see where the story takes them. Now, I have written like that quite a bit before, but I found that in recent years, outlining has really helped me. So I'm a plotter, which means that I like to have my whole story plotted out before I actually start the writing process. The reason I like to do this is because when I get an idea, I usually don't get an idea about a whole story at once. Usually I'll get an idea about a character, or I'll have inspiration for a scene, or sometimes even a backstory for a character, something like that. So I like to outline because then I am able to take the little bit of the idea that I had and kind of brainstorm and flesh it out. And granted, my outline at the beginning of the story does not stay the same. There is a certain amount of pantsing once I'm actually in the story. Sometimes I have a whole idea for the way the story is going to go at the beginning and I have my outline set, and then once I've started writing, the story kind of takes me off in a different direction and then I have to re-outline. So I don't stick completely true to my outline if I don't feel like it's necessary once I start the story, but I do start with an outline first so I at least have a framework to go off of. I like outlines because I like to make sure that my story is hitting on the major plot points that a story needs to have to be successful. So in the past, I've had a few tools that have really helped me with this. One is KM Weiland's website. It's helpingwritersbecomeauthors.com. I'll link it in the description below. If you guys haven't heard of her or haven't read her stuff, she's got excellent story structure tips on her website. And all of it's free on her website. She does have a book as well, which is called Structuring Your Novel, and I have read that one as well. I have it in my Audible library, so when I go on road trips or sometimes to and from work, I'll listen to it, and it kind of helps keep me centered when I'm thinking about brainstorming a story. For my next novel, I think I'm going to study Save the Cat Writes a Novel, which is another one that I can link down below if you guys are interested in it. It's got some excellent story structure stuff in it as well. So every time I start a new story, I like to find a new story craft book or reread a book that I already have, because it kind of keeps that in my mind as to the major story points that I need to hit on while I'm brainstorming a story. And it's helpful also while you're writing a story, because then you can kind of be thinking, okay, how is this scene I'm thinking of going to affect the overall story? So anyway, I do outline my stories first. So I kind of have a guide for where I'm going when I start a story. Once I have my outline done, then I start working on my first draft. So I draft in Scrivener mostly. I've used Google Docs quite a bit, and I do back up all of my stuff to Google Docs. I like that because I can access it from anywhere, and Scrivener luckily does have a function that can back up to Google Docs. So even if I don't have my laptop with me, which is the only computer I use that has Scrivener on it, I can still, if I get inspiration or a few minutes wherever I'm at, I can still access those files from anywhere because they're saved on Google Docs and edit them as needed. But I do really like Scrivener. I've started using it just within the last probably year or so, and I have found that it has a lot of really good tools and things for writers. Specifically, it was made for writers by writers. So I really like that, and I use a lot of the functions within it. If you have not used Scrivener before, I highly recommend it. I actually got mine for free. You do have to pay for it usually, but I got mine for free through NaNoWriMo. If you haven't heard of that, that is National Novel Writing Month, which takes place every November. And they have a few others that take place throughout the year as well, like Camp NaNoWriMo, which is coming up here in April. So NaNoWriMo is National Novel Writing Month that takes place in November, and basically you try to write 50,000 words in 30 days. It is super fun. If you haven't tried it before, I really recommend it. It is a really big challenge, and I'll be honest, I have yet to win a NaNoWriMo, but every November I always get a lot of words down, and there's a whole community online. It's nanowrimo.org. I can link that one down below too. But it's a whole community of writers that are all trying to do the same thing, and everybody kind of cheers each other on. You can go on and declare what your project is. It's completely free. You just make an account. Anyway, last year, or maybe it was the year before that, I don't know if they do it every year. It'd be something to check into though. But they had free licenses for Scrivener for the people who took part in NaNoWriMo. So that's how I got mine, actually. I did not pay for mine. And I absolutely love it. If you're looking for a new word processing tool for your writing, I highly recommend checking it out. There are a lot of tutorials online for how to use it because it is kind of complicated at first. It's not just a simple Word document like you're probably used to, but there are a lot of really cool functions within it that you can use that are really helpful. So anyway, I write my first draft in Scrivener, and like I said, I have an outline, but I sometimes will get ideas and I'm like, oh, this would be really cool, or oh, I might have to change this later. So within Scrivener, there's a bunch of different things that you can use, and so I will usually, while I'm drafting my first draft, if I have any ideas that I'm like, oh, that would be really cool to change, or maybe this should change later, I will make a separate place, so a separate document if you use Microsoft Word or whatever, but make a separate place where I have notes for while I'm drafting. So if I'm writing a scene and I'm like, oh, well, you know, I don't know how this is working, but maybe down the road I can change it to something like this. Rather than going back and changing it right then, I'll just make a note on that separate sheet. And then when I go back through for my first edits, I can refer back to that and remember what I was thinking while I wrote that scene. During my first draft, I don't edit at all. I like to keep the story flowing and just keep going, and even if I end up veering off in a completely different direction, I don't like to go back and change anything right then, because once I come back and edit a little while later, whether it's months or whatever, later, then I'm in a different mindset and I don't want to mess anything up during that time. So like I said, I just take notes off to the side and I just go where the story takes me and follow my outline as roughly as I feel like I need to, I guess. Once I finish the first draft, I will usually have a couple people read it. I've said this before, but I have my husband usually read my novels. He doesn't read in the same genre as me, and so he's got a lot of really good insight into story and things like that that I might not have thought of because I obviously write and read in that genre. So he's got a lot of good outsider perspective that I can use and take into account when I'm doing my first edits. So my first round of editing is for story. I'm not looking at line edits, I'm not looking at word choice, anything like that. All I'm looking at is the overall structure of the story and whether the overall structure of the story is working. So I'll usually have my husband read it. I have a few other people that read during this point as well once I've finished the first draft, and I'll kind of take all of their notes into account as well as my own notes that I took while I was writing the draft. I'll take all of that into account as I'm going into my first edits. Before I start my first edits, I will usually make a long list or another outline or just basically some notes for some major story changes that need to happen. And then I'll go back through and I'll make those major story changes first and then go back out and let me think of how to explain this. So every major story change that you make causes a ripple effect. It starts with where the big change happens, and then it causes these ripples that go all the way out. And so you have to examine all of the scenes around that big scene as well as beyond, and basically go through and make sure that everything is consistent with the change that you've made. Once I feel pretty good that my story is solid, then I'll go back and I'll do line edits. In the past, I'll just read it out loud to myself. I've had a few authors that I follow say that they actually like to have their computer read the story back to them, and I really like this idea. I think I'm going to try it on my next novel because I'm a big audiobook listener, and so I think I'll catch a lot more if I have someone else read it to me or something else read it to me, and then I can kind of read along as I go. So I'm going to try that on the next one. I'll let you know how that goes. So during that second pass, I am looking for things like word choice, or does the sentence sound weird, or does the dialogue make sense? Things like that. So things that I can change right then as I'm going through and having the story read to me or reading the story aloud. Once I've completed the second pass of editing, then I will have my beta readers read the story and see what they think about the changes I've made as well as the overall story in general. Usually at this point there's not a whole lot that I need to change, but in the case of safekeeping, it didn't really follow this formula because I have changed so much throughout the story just because it's been so many years that I've been working on it. So just to recap, I do my first pass that is just story related, just structure related. My second pass is all for line edits, word choice, things like that. And then I have my beta readers read it again. Now, once my beta readers have read it and given me their feedback and I've taken it into account and made any other changes that I need to, then I go into my final pass for editing, which is copy edits. And copy edits is basically reading through and a final check, and I'm looking for things like missed periods and missed commas and misspelled words and things like that. If a story makes it through all of those phases and I'm feeling pretty good about it, then I'm usually ready to move forward to the next stage, which in this case would be publishing. A few things to keep in mind here is, first of all, that is like the ideal way that a story would go in my head. With safekeeping, it did not go this way. It did not just have 3 rounds of edits. It has had probably 300 rounds of edits. So with every change that I make, then I kind of have to start the edit process over again. So although it would be nice to only do 3 rounds of edits, in my experience, very rarely does that happen. And maybe the more books I write and the better I get, the fewer edit rounds I'll have to make. But for right now, that's definitely not the way it has gone in my head every single time, but it's definitely something to work towards. And I like to have that goal and kind of that guideline so that I'm making sure that I'm not missing anything in that process. Safekeeping, like I said, has had literally, I cannot even count how many rounds of editing, but I am in the final stages right now. I'm making those last few changes and doing the copy edits and everything right in the same time frame because I'm crazy and I'm on a really tight deadline if I want to hit all my publishing goals this year. Life is a little crazy for me at the moment because I am pregnant with my first baby. She is due in June, and I don't know if you can see this. Guard dog duty starts June 2019. Anyway, life's a little crazy right now because I'm starting this YouTube channel and I'm really starting to promote my book and I'm starting to get my author platform in place, as well as trying to finish safekeeping and prep for a baby and all this other stuff going on. So my deadlines are super important to me right now because I have everything structured and set a certain way so that I have enough time, hopefully, to get everything done. If you haven't been watching my videos for the last couple of weeks, I am in the final edits for safekeeping. My deadline actually is tomorrow because today is March 9th when I am filming this. So my deadline for safekeeping is tomorrow, and let's be honest, I'm probably not going to hit it, but I am going to get very close. So my husband and I are actually leaving for Florida tonight for a little bit of a baby moon. So we're going to spend the week in Florida, and even though my story, Safekeeping, the final draft is due tomorrow, I am a little over halfway done with it. So I'm going to work on it on the plane tonight, and hopefully throughout this week, my husband will be nice and give me a little bit of time here and there to work on it, and hopefully I can finish it this week, which shouldn't throw my deadlines too far off. And I'll feel a lot more comfortable about that than rushing through the last half today while I'm trying to pack for my trip and make sure everything's covered while we're gone. So it's going to be a little bit of crazy around here, but when is it ever not crazy? So it'll be good. I am making good time, and even though I'm not going to hit my deadline probably, I still feel really good about it because having that goal has made me really laser focused, and I have been able to get more done in the last 2 weeks than I ever would have thought possible. So I'm really excited about that, and I guess if you can take anything away from this video, just know that 1, edits don't always go the way that you think they will, even if you have a plan. And 2, set deadlines for yourself, because I guarantee that if you have deadlines and goals for yourself, you'll accomplish more than you ever thought that you could have. Anyway, I'm going to end the video here. I'll be back next week, hopefully a little bit tanner than I am right now, and I will have another video for you guys. So I really appreciate you watching, and if you don't mind, if you give this video a thumbs up and also subscribe to support my channel, that would be awesome. Also, if you'd like, please leave me a comment below and let me know where you're at in your writing process. Are you in the plotting stage or the drafting stage or the editing stage? And let me know if you have any other editing tips or tricks to streamline the process, since mine never goes the way that I plan it to. I'd love to hear about it, and I'm sure other writers would as well. So again, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys next week. Bye!